Elderly secretary fired after 35 years for being too old. Everyone was shocked at the reading of the will. The sun streamed through the tall windows of the office, casting a warm glow on the polished wooden desks and the vibrant green plants that adorned the corners. It was a typical morning at the bustling advertising agency where Agnes Holloway had spent the last 35 years of her life. The air was filled with the sounds of typing, ringing phones, and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting from the break room. Agnes sat at her desk, a space filled with framed photographs of her family, mementos from company events, and award plaques, each telling a story of dedication and hard work. But on this day, the atmosphere felt different, charged with an unspoken tension that seemed to hang in the air. As she opened her email, Agnes noticed an unusual message from Human Resources. A knot tightened in her stomach as she clicked on the email, the subject line reading, "Important Employment Update." Her heart raced, and she felt the blood drain from her face as she read the words that would change her life forever. "We are making personnel cuts, and unfortunately, your position will no longer be necessary. Thank you for your years of service." The words blurred together, and she struggled to maintain her composure. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed the laptop, the office around her fading into a distant hum. "Agnes, are you okay?" her colleague Sarah asked as she passed by, noticing the pallor on Agnes's face. I just received some news," Agnes stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. She forced a smile, but the effort felt heavy on her lips. "I'll be fine." Sarah's brow furrowed with concern. "You know you can talk to me, right? We're all here for you." Agnes nodded, but the words lodged in her throat. She watched as Sarah walked away, wishing she could share the weight of her news, but the fear of judgment and pity stifled her voice. Instead, she returned to staring blankly at her computer screen, the vibrant color of the desktop background now feeling like a cruel mockery of her reality. Minutes turned into hours as Agnes navigated through the day, her usual routine disrupted by the gnawing anxiety that accompanied her impending unemployment. The lunch hour came, and the break room was abuzz with laughter and chatter, but Agnes felt like a ghost among her colleagues. They shared stories, exchanged jokes, and savored their meals while she sat at a corner table, pushing her salad around her plate, the food losing its taste. "Hey Agnes, come join us," called out Jack, a jovial member of the team known for his infectious laughter. "We're just talking about the upcoming campaign. You have to give us your input." "Yeah, Agnes, we need your expertise," another colleague chimed in. She forced herself to smile, but the warmth felt distant. "I'm okay here, really," she replied, her voice lacking the enthusiasm it once had. As the conversations continued, Agnes remained an observer, her heart heavy with the knowledge of her impending departure. The team had become her second family over the years, and the thought of leaving them felt like a betrayal to the bonds they had forged. She had shared countless milestones with them, birthdays, promotions, and even the everyday triumphs and struggles that came with the territory of working in advertising. Later that afternoon, Agnes found herself in the conference room, surrounded by familiar faces, now tinged with concern. They were gathered for a meeting, but the atmosphere was charged with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. The usual discussions about campaigns and strategies seemed to fade into the background as Agnes sat quietly, her mind racing with thoughts of her future. "Okay, team," the manager started. "We have some important updates to discuss, and I want to thank all of you for your hard work. We've been facing some challenges, and it's tough for me to say this, but..." Agnes felt her heart pounding. She could see the glances exchanged around the table, the unspoken understanding that something was amiss. She held her breath, waiting for the words that would seal her fate. "Due to budget cuts, we unfortunately have to let some people go, and I want you all to know that this decision was incredibly difficult," he continued, his voice strained. "Agnes, you've been a valued member of our team for so long. Your contributions have been immeasurable, and I want you to know that this isn't a reflection of your performance." The words felt like daggers, piercing through any semblance of hope. Agnes's breath caught in her throat, and she could feel the heat rising to her cheeks. She clenched her fists under the table, fighting back tears, The room echoed with murmurs of sympathy, but all she could focus on was the reality that she would soon no longer be a part of this world she had known for so long. After the meeting, as the team filed out, Agnes remained seated, staring blankly at the now emptied conference table. Sarah lingered behind, her expression a mix of concern and empathy. "Agnes, I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can do," Sarah began, her voice gentle. Agnes looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I just don't understand why this is happening. I've given everything to this place," she said, her voice trembling. "I know, and it's not fair. You're not just an employee, you're the heart of this company," Sarah replied, her eyes filled with understanding. "Thank you, Sarah," Agnes whispered, her heart aching with gratitude for the support of her colleagues, even as she felt the weight of isolation creeping in. As she gathered her things to leave for the day, Agnes felt the familiar pang of sadness wash over her. Her desk, once a space of creativity and collaboration, now felt like a tomb of memories, each item a reminder of the life she was leaving behind. She paused to take one last look around the office, the laughter and camaraderie echoing in her mind like a distant melody. "Agnes, don't forget about the farewell gathering next week," Jack said, stopping by her desk as she prepared to leave. "We'll all be there to celebrate your time with us." "Yeah, I'll try to make it," she replied, forcing a smile, but the thought of attending a farewell gathering felt like a knife twisting in her gut. As she stepped outside into the cool Seattle air, the weight of the world settled heavily on her shoulders. The bustling streets were alive with energy, yet she felt like a ghost, drifting through a life that was no longer hers. The vibrant colors of the city matched the lively spirit of its inhabitants, but Agnes felt muted, as if a gray cloud had settled over her heart. That evening, she returned home to her small apartment, which was filled with echoes of laughter and love from the past. Pictures of her family adorned the walls, memories of birthdays and holidays, moments that had shaped her life. She dropped her bag on the floor and sank onto the couch, the tears finally spilling over. "Why does it have to be like this?" she whispered to herself, her voice cracking. Each tear felt like a release, but the uncertainty of her future loomed large. The thought of starting over at her age, of facing a world that often favored youth, was daunting. As she gazed at the photographs, Agnes felt a surge of nostalgia and longing. She remembered the day her husband had surprised her with a trip to Paris, the two of them laughing as they strolled along the Seine. She remembered the pride in his eyes when she received accolades at work, the way he always encouraged her to follow her dreams. "Henry, what am I supposed to do now?" she murmured, as if expecting an answer from the silence that surrounded her. But all that greeted her was the echo of her own voice, a reminder of the void left by his absence. In the solitude of her living room, Agnes felt the weight of her loss, not just of her husband, but of her identity. She had dedicated her life to her career, and now, stripped of that, she felt adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The world outside continued to move forward, but for Agnes, time seemed to stand still. The evening stretched on, and as she wiped her tears, a flicker of determination ignited within her. She found herself reaching for the framed picture of her and Henry, a smile breaking through her sorrow. "I can't just give up," she whispered, her voice steadier now. "He wouldn't want that." With a newfound resolve, Agnes sat up straighter, her mind racing with possibilities. She had always believed in the power of creativity and education. Perhaps it was time to channel that passion into something meaningful. The idea of starting a community school had always lingered in the back of her mind, a dream she had shared with Henry during long conversations over coffee. Maybe it's time to honor his memory, she thought, a spark of inspiration igniting within her. Though the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, Agnes felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this was not the end, but a new beginning, one that could lead her to a purpose greater than herself. Agnes Holloway sat in her dimly lit living room, the weight of the world pressing down on her. The letter of termination lay crumpled in her hand, the harsh words echoing in her mind. She could hardly believe that her career, which spanned over 3.5 decades, had come to such an abrupt end. The pain was sharp, cutting deeper than she had anticipated. It wasn't just the loss of her job, it was the loss of her identity, the feeling of being deemed too old to contribute. As she stared out of the window, the Seattle rain pattered softly against the glass, reflecting her somber mood. Her eyes wandered to the framed photographs on the mantelpiece. Snapshots of her life filled with laughter, family gatherings, and moments of pride. Among them was a picture of her late husband Daniel, his smile wide and infectious. Memories flooded back, and she could almost hear his voice, soothing and encouraging, reminding her that life had a way of surprising people. With a heavy sigh, Agnes reached for the stack of papers on the coffee table, pushing aside the letter that had shattered her world. As she sifted through the documents, a familiar envelope caught her eye. It was the testamentary letter Daniel had left behind, detailing his wishes after his passing. With trembling hands, she opened it, her heart racing with anticipation and dread. Her eyes scanned the carefully penned words, and suddenly they stopped. There it was, a mention of a substantial sum left for a community school, the dream they had often discussed together but had never pursued. Tears sprang to her eyes as she recalled those long conversations with Daniel, filled with passion and hope. "We could make a real difference, Agnes," he had said, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Imagine teaching young people the skills they need to succeed." Agnes felt a flicker of something inside her, a blend of grief and renewed purpose. She realized that this was more than just money. It was an opportunity to honor Daniel's memory and fulfill a dream they had shared. But doubts crept in. Could she really do this? Was she capable of leading such a project, especially after being cast aside like yesterday's news? "Maybe this is just a pipe dream," she muttered to herself, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm just an old secretary now. No one will take me seriously." In that moment of despair, the phone rang, startling her. She glanced at the caller ID and saw Sarah's name flashing on the screen. Taking a deep breath, she answered, forcing a smile into her voice. "Hey, Sarah." "Agnes, I've been thinking about you," Sarah exclaimed, her voice bright and cheerful, a stark contrast to Agnes's mood. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," Agnes replied, her heart not in it. "I just received some news, and it's a lot to process." Sarah's tone shifted, becoming more serious. "Is it about the job? I heard you got laid off. I'm so sorry, Agnes. You didn't deserve that." "Thank you," Agnes said, her voice cracking. "It just feels so surreal. After all these years, I thought I was part of the family." "You were," Sarah reassured her. "You still are in many ways. We all looked up to you. But listen, have you thought about what you want to do next?" Agnes hesitated, the thought swirling in her head. "I don't know, Sarah. I found something in Daniel's will about a school. We talked about it a lot, but it feels impossible now." "Why does it feel impossible?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with encouragement. "You have the heart, the experience, and you know what these kids need. You could really make a difference." "But I'm not a teacher," Agnes protested, feeling a wave of insecurity wash over her. "What do I know about running a school?" "More than you think. You've spent years mentoring younger colleagues and clients. You know how to inspire people. You've already been teaching in your own way." Agnes pondered Sarah's words. Perhaps she had more to offer than she realized. "I just feel so lost," she admitted. "What if I fail?" "Failure's just a stepping stone, Agnes. You won't be alone in this. I'll help you, and I know Jack would jump at the chance to support you too. You're not in this alone." A warmth spread through Agnes's chest at the thought of her friends rallying around her. "Thanks, Sarah. You always know how to lift my spirits," she said, a small smile breaking through her melancholy. "Let's meet tomorrow, okay? We can brainstorm ideas for the school together. You might be surprised at what we come up with." "Okay," Agnes agreed, feeling a hint of excitement creeping in. "I'd like that." After hanging up, Agnes sat in silence, contemplating Sarah's words. The thought of creating a school, of giving back to the community, ignited a spark within her. It was a daunting task, yes, but it was also a chance to honor Daniel's legacy. She could almost hear him saying, "You're stronger than you think, Agnes. Just take it one step at a time." Taking a deep breath, she reached for a notebook and began to jot down ideas. What would the curriculum look like? What skills did she want to teach? Her pen danced across the page, filling it with visions of creativity, art, and life skills. As she wrote, memories of her childhood surfaced, the struggles, the moments of joy, and the teachers who had made a difference in her life. Each word she penned felt like a step toward reclaiming her purpose. The next day, Agnes met Sarah and Jack at a cozy cafe downtown. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the air as they settled into a corner booth, and Agnes felt the familiar warmth of camaraderie envelop her. "Okay, let's hear your ideas, Agnes," Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. Taking a deep breath, Agnes shared her vision for the school. "I want it to be a place where young people can learn not just skills, but also gain confidence and a sense of belonging. We could have art classes, workshops on communication and teamwork, and even sessions on financial literacy." Jack nodded, his expression serious yet supportive. "That's a great start. We can focus on what the community needs most. Have you thought about reaching out to local businesses for support?" "I have," Agnes admitted, "but I'm hesitant. What if they think I'm not qualified?" "Your experience speaks for itself," Sarah insisted. "You know these people, Agnes. You have relationships with them. Just be honest about your intentions, and you might be surprised by their response." "Right," Agnes replied, her confidence slowly building. "Maybe I could set up a meeting with some of them next week." The trio spent hours brainstorming and refining Agnes's ideas. Each suggestion sparked more inspiration, and soon the initial fear that had gripped her began to dissipate. As they wrapped up their meeting, Agnes felt a renewed sense of hope. "Thank you both. I really needed this," she said, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Just remember, you're not alone in this," Jack said, giving her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "We're here for you every step of the way." "I know," Agnes replied, a smile breaking across her face. "I think I'm ready to take the first step." With her friends rallying around her, the dream that had once felt out of reach began to seem possible. As she walked home, the Seattle rain had stopped, and the sun peeked through the clouds, casting a golden light on the path ahead. The future was still uncertain, but Agnes felt a sense of determination blossoming within her. It was time to honor Daniel's memory and chase a dream that could change not only her life, but also the lives of many young people in her community. Agnes Holloway stood outside the municipal building, her heart racing as she clutched the stack of papers in her hands. She had spent the last few days meticulously preparing for this meeting, but now, standing before the imposing structure, she felt a wave of doubt wash over her. What was she thinking? A school? At her age? As she took a deep breath, she recalled her husband's words. "You can do anything you set your mind to, Agnes." But now those words felt like a distant echo, swallowed by the gravity of the moment. Inside, the air was thick with bureaucracy, the walls adorned with framed photographs of past mayors and city events. Agnes approached the reception desk, her hands trembling slightly. The receptionist, a young woman with bright pink hair and an air of indifference, barely glanced up. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone flat. "I'm here to see Mr. Thompson about a community school project," Agnes replied, trying to inject some confidence into her voice. "Take a seat. He'll be with you shortly," the receptionist said, returning to her phone, leaving Agnes to stew in her anxiety. Agnes found a chair and sat down, her mind racing. She had envisioned this meeting countless times, rehearsing her pitch for the school, the mission, and the impact it could have on the community. But now, as she waited, the doubt crept in like a shadow, whispering that perhaps she was not the right person for the job. Who was she, after all? A recently unemployed secretary trying to build a school from scratch. Minutes felt like hours, and finally the door swung open. A tall man in a tailored suit stepped out, his demeanor all business. "Miss Holloway?" he inquired, scanning the room until his gaze landed on her. "Yes, that's me," she said, rising to shake his hand. His grip was firm, but his expression was skeptical. "Mr. Thompson," he introduced himself, motioning for her to enter his office. The room was sparsely decorated, with a large desk, a computer, and a few chairs. It felt cold, almost sterile. "Thank you for seeing me," Agnes said, taking a seat opposite him. "Let's get straight to the point," he said, leaning back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "I understand you want to open a community school?" "Yes," Agnes replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I want to create a space where young people can learn creative skills. Art, music, writing, things that can help them express themselves and find their paths." "Do you have experience in education?" he asked, his eyebrow raised. Agnes hesitated. Well, I don't have formal teaching experience, but I've spent 35 years in advertising, working with clients, and mentoring younger colleagues. I believe that the skills I've developed can translate into teaching. Mentoring, you say? He leaned forward, fingers steepled under his chin. That's not quite the same as running a school. You need a solid plan, funding, and a team of qualified educators. Have you considered all of that? His words hit Agnes like a slap. I know it won't be easy, but I have a vision, and I'm willing to learn. I just need a chance to make it happen. Mr. Thompson sighed, his demeanor softening slightly. Look, I admire your passion, but the city needs to see a viable proposal. Without a clear plan, I can't assure you of any support. Agnes felt the weight of his words. It was more than just a rejection. It was a reality check. I understand, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But I believe in this project. I know it can make a difference. Passion alone won't get you far, he said, his tone firm but not unkind. You need to back it up with data, community support, and a budget. Come back to me with a detailed proposal, and then we can discuss it further. With that, he stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Agnes felt her heart sink as she left his office. The encounter had been a harsh reminder of the uphill battles she faced. Stepping out into the bustling street, she took a deep breath, trying to shake off the despair. As she walked to her car, she felt a storm of emotions brewing inside her. The doubts clung to her like a heavy cloak. What am I doing? She muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible over the noise of the city. She had felt so confident before, but now she was left questioning everything. Sitting in her car, she stared at the steering wheel, feeling the tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. I can't give up, she whispered to herself, recalling the dream she had nurtured since her husband passed away. He believed in me. With renewed determination, Agnes drove home, her mind racing with ideas. She would need to gather more information, connect with potential partners, and even seek out individuals who could bring expertise to the project. There had to be a way to make this work. Over the next few days, Agnes poured herself into research. She visited local schools, spoke to educators, and sought out community leaders. Each conversation brought a mix of encouragement and skepticism. Many admired her dedication, but questioned her qualifications. You're taking on a monumental task, one principal warned. You need to be prepared for the challenges ahead. Agnes nodded, absorbing their words. She wasn't naive about the challenges. She just had to stay focused on her mission. One afternoon, while sipping coffee in a local cafe, she ran into Sarah, one of her former colleagues. Sarah's face lit up when she saw Agnes. Agnes, it's so good to see you. How have you been? Hi, Sarah, Agnes replied, forcing a smile. I've been busy, actually. Busy? Doing what? Sarah asked, curiosity piqued. I'm trying to start a community school, Agnes said, her voice a mix of excitement and apprehension. Wow, that's incredible. But you know that's a huge undertaking, right? Sarah said, concern lining her features. I know it is, Agnes admitted, feeling the weight of the truth in her words. But I have a vision, and I'm determined to make it happen. I just need to figure out the logistics and find the right people to help. Have you thought about reaching out to Jack? Sarah suggested. He's always been involved in community projects. He might have some insights or connections that could help. Agnes's heart leapt at the mention of Jack's name. They had remained friends after the years at the agency, but she hadn't thought of turning to him for support. I haven't, she said slowly, but maybe I should. Definitely, you should give him a call, Sarah encouraged. You know he'd want to help. After parting ways with Sarah, Agnes felt a flicker of hope. She picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over Jack's number. It had been a while since they'd spoken, and the thought of reaching out made her both anxious and excited. Gathering her courage, she pressed the call button. Agnes, Jack's voice came through, warm and welcoming. It's been too long, how are you? I've been okay, she replied, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something important. Sure, what's on your mind? He asked, his tone encouraging. I'm trying to start a community school, Agnes blurted out, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess herself. I could really use some advice, or even support. Wow, that's amazing, Jack exclaimed, genuine enthusiasm in his voice. I'm in. What do you need? Agnes felt a wave of relief wash over her. "I'm not sure yet. I'm still working on my proposal for the city, and I could use someone with your experience. Maybe we can brainstorm ideas together?" "Absolutely. Let's meet up," Jack said, his excitement palpable. "I'd love to help you make this happen." As they made plans to meet, Agnes felt a renewed sense of purpose. With Jack's involvement, she could tackle the challenges ahead with more confidence. Maybe the dream was still alive, and perhaps together they could turn it into a reality. But she also knew that the road ahead would be filled with hurdles. As she lay in bed that night, she reflected on her meeting with Mr. Thompson and the doubts that still lingered. "I'll show them," she whispered to herself, determination hardening in her chest. "I won't let my age or my past define me." With that thought, Agnes closed her eyes, envisioning a vibrant school filled with laughter and creativity, a place where she could make a real difference. The journey would not be easy, but she was ready to fight for her dream, one step at a time. Agnes stood at the back of the small community center, her heart racing as she watched the crowd gather for the fundraising event. It was a chilly evening in Seattle, and the air was thick with anticipation. The hall was decorated with colorful banners, handmade by local children who had been inspired by her vision for the community school. Tables were filled with baked goods, art pieces, and crafts donated by generous locals eager to support her cause. As she surveyed the room, Agnes felt a mix of excitement and anxiety bubbling within her. This was her chance to take a step toward realizing her dream, but the weight of self-doubt loomed heavily on her shoulders. She had spent countless hours planning this event, hoping to raise enough funds to kickstart the project, but now that the moment had arrived, she was paralyzed by the fear of speaking in front of an audience. "Agnes, there you are!" Sarah, her former colleague and steadfast friend, called out as she approached with a warm smile. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Are you ready for this?" Agnes forced a smile, her stomach twisting in knots. "I'm not sure if ready is the right word," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if no one wants to listen to me? What if they think I'm too old to start something like this?" "Listen," Sarah said, placing a reassuring hand on Agnes's shoulder. "You've put your heart and soul into this. People are here because they believe in you and your vision. You're going to be amazing. Just remember, it's not about perfection. It's about sharing your passion." With a deep breath, Agnes nodded, though the fluttering in her stomach didn't subside. She watched as people mingled, exchanging stories and laughter, but the thought of stepping into the spotlight felt daunting. As the event began, the host, a charismatic young man named Mark, took the stage, his energy infectious. "Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight to support Agnes and her incredible vision for a community school." His enthusiasm ignited the crowd, and Agnes felt a flicker of hope. "We have a lineup of amazing activities planned for you, but first, let's hear from the woman behind this project." Agnes felt her heart drop. "Oh no, it's happening," she murmured, panic setting in. "Go on, Agnes," Sarah encouraged. "It's your time to shine." With a deep breath, Agnes stepped up to the microphone, her palms clammy against the cool metal. The room fell silent, and for a moment all she could hear was her heartbeat pounding in her ears. She glanced across the crowd, catching the encouraging nods from familiar faces, friends, former colleagues, and even a few strangers who had come to support her. Hi everyone," Agnes began, her voice trembling slightly. "Hi, I'm Agnes Holloway. I've been a part of this community for many years, and tonight I'm here to share a dream that my late husband and I had." She paused, taking a moment to collect her thoughts as she glanced at the audience. "I was recently let go from my job after 35 years in advertising," she continued, her words flowing more freely now. "And while that was a painful experience, it also opened my eyes to a new opportunity. My husband always believed in the power of creativity, and he wanted to create a space where young people could explore their talents and learn new skills. That's why I'm here tonight, to gather support for a community school that will do just that." As she spoke, Agnes felt the warmth of the crowd's attention wrap around her. She could see the interest building in their eyes, and it fueled her determination. "I want to create a safe haven for young people at risk, where they can learn everything from art to coding," a place where they can express themselves and find their passions. A smattering of applause echoed through the hall, and Agnes's heart swelled with gratitude. She continued, her voice gaining strength. "But I can't do this alone. I need your help. With your support tonight, we can make this dream a reality. We have art classes planned, workshops for entrepreneurship, and mentorship programs that will change lives." Just then, she noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Tom, an old client from the agency, his presence unexpected but comforting. He smiled encouragingly, and for the first time, Agnes felt a surge of confidence. "I know many of you may have doubts about starting something like this, especially at my age," she continued, addressing the unspoken concerns she sensed in the room. "But I believe that age is just a number. We all have something to contribute, no matter when we start. And I promise to bring my years of experience to this school to guide and inspire our future generations." Her words resonated, and she could feel the energy shifting in the room. People were leaning in, engaged, as if they were catching a glimpse of a brighter future. "Tonight, we have some exciting auction items and activities planned, so please bid generously, and let's make this happen together," Agnes concluded, her heart racing as she stepped back from the microphone. The audience erupted into applause, and Agnes felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had done it. She had shared her vision and connected with the crowd in a way she never thought possible. As people began to mingle again, Agnes felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Mark, the host. "That was incredible, Agnes. You really captured the spirit of your vision. I think people are going to be eager to support you." "Thank you, Mark," she replied, her heart still racing. "I hope so. I just want to make a difference." "Believe me, you already have," he said with a grin before moving on to chat with other guests. Agnes felt a sense of camaraderie growing as she walked through the crowd, exchanging smiles and conversations. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she spotted Tom making his way toward her. "Agnes?" he called out, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "I'm so glad I came tonight. Your speech was inspiring." "Tom, it's great to see you," she said, her heart skipping a beat. "Thank you for coming. I couldn't pass up the chance to support such a meaningful project," he replied, his voice warm and genuine. "I've always admired your dedication. You've always been a force of nature." "Thank you, but I'm just trying to follow through on a dream," Agnes said modestly. "It's a bit daunting, to be honest." Tom leaned in closer, his expression earnest. "You're more than capable, Agnes. If anyone can make this happen, it's you. I'd love to help out however I can." "Really? That would mean so much to me." Agnes felt a rush of gratitude. "I could use all the help I can get." As they chatted, Agnes felt the initial awkwardness begin to dissipate, replaced by a feeling of connection that had long been dormant. They reminisced about old times, shared laughs, and soon found themselves deep in conversation about the school's vision. "Have you thought about incorporating some business skills into the curriculum?" Tom suggested. "I mean, teaching the kids not just how to create, but also how to sell their work? It could empower them." "That's a brilliant idea," Agnes exclaimed, her mind racing with possibilities. "I want to teach them not just to create, but to understand the value of their talent." "Exactly. I'd love to help you brainstorm some ideas for workshops," Tom offered, his enthusiasm infectious. As they continued to talk, Agnes felt the warmth of rekindled friendship blossoming into something more. For the first time since her husband's passing, she felt a sense of hope, a reminder that life still held possibilities. "Hey, Agnes?" Mark's voice cut through their conversation. "We're about to kick off the auction. Are you ready?" "Almost. Just a minute," she called back, turning to Tom. "I guess we should join everyone." "Let's go," Tom said, a smile spreading across his face. "I'm excited to see how this all unfolds." They made their way to the front of the room, where the auction items were displayed. Agnes's heart raced as she watched the bids start to come in. The energy in the room was electric, and she felt a surge of gratitude for every person who had come to support her dream. As the evening progressed, Agnes felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each bid raised not just money, but hope. Hope for the young people who would one day walk through the doors of her community school. By the time the auction concluded, Agnes couldn't contain her joy. They had surpassed their fundraising goal, and the crowd erupted in cheers. She felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her as she looked around at the smiling faces of those who believed in her vision. Thank you all," Agnes exclaimed, her voice filled with emotion. "This is just the beginning, and I promise to make you all proud." As the night came to a close, Agnes felt a shift within herself. She had stepped out of the shadows of self-doubt and into a place of strength. The support from the community, the connection with Tom, and the realization that she could indeed create lasting change filled her with a profound sense of purpose. In that moment, she understood. This was not just about building a school, it was about building a future where creativity thrived, where young people found their voices, and where age was never a barrier to pursuing one's dreams. And as she looked at the faces of those who Agnes stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her blouse for the third time, the soft fabric felt foreign on her skin, and she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in her stomach. Today was the day of the community event, where she would meet potential students and their families. She had spent countless hours organizing it, but now that the moment had arrived, self-doubt crept in like a shadow. Her phone buzzed on the dresser, and she picked it up, her heart racing as she saw Jack's name flash on the screen. Taking a deep breath, she answered, "Hello? Hey Agnes, are you ready for today?" Jack's voice was upbeat and comforting, like a warm blanket on a cold day. "I'm trying to be," Agnes replied, forcing a smile that she hoped he could sense through the phone. I don't know if I can do this." "Of course you can. You've been planning this for weeks. Just remember, you're doing this for the kids. They're counting on you," Jack encouraged. "I know, but what if they don't want to come? What if I can't connect with them?" Agnes's voice trembled slightly. "You will. Just be yourself. You have so much to offer," he reassured her. "And hey, I'll be there to support you. We'll tackle this together." "Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate it. I'll see you soon." She hung up and took a moment to breathe, feeling slightly more grounded. The thought of seeing Jack again brought a flutter of anticipation, mingling with her anxiety. When she arrived at the community center, the room was already buzzing with activity. Colorful banners hung from the ceiling, and tables were set up with crafts and information about the classes she planned to offer. As she walked in, she was greeted by a mix of familiar and new faces. Some neighbors had shown up to help, and a few of her former colleagues had come to lend their support. "Agnes, you look fantastic," Sarah exclaimed, rushing over to give her a quick hug. "Thanks, Sarah. I'm just nervous," Agnes admitted, glancing around at the crowd. "You'll be great. Just think about all the lives you can change," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Let's get this party started." As the event kicked off, Agnes found herself moving from group to group, introducing herself and talking about the vision she had for the school. A few parents were skeptical, but most seemed genuinely interested. It felt liberating to share her dream, but with each interaction, her nerves bubbled up again. Halfway through the event, she spotted a familiar face across the room. It was Tom, her old flame from years ago. He was standing by a table, looking engaged in conversation with a few community members. Her heart skipped a beat at the sight of him, memories flooding back of their shared laughter and the easy connection they once had. "Agnes," Jack called out, pulling her attention back. "Come over here. I want you to meet some families." She hesitated for a moment, fighting the urge to avoid Tom, but then decided to push through the discomfort. As she approached Jack, she noticed that Tom had turned his attention to her. Their eyes met, and a smile spread across his face. "Agnes, it's been a while," he said, stepping closer. His voice was warm, and she could feel the weight of the years between them. "It has. How have you been?" she replied, trying to keep her tone light. "Busy with work, but I've been following your project. I think it's amazing what you're doing," he said sincerely. "Thanks, Tom. It's a little overwhelming, but I feel passionate about it," she admitted, her confidence wavering slightly. "I can see that. You've always had that spark," he remarked, his eyes searching hers. "I'd love to help out if you need someone to run workshops or classes." Agnes felt a rush of emotions at his offer. "Really? That would be incredible. I didn't expect you to be interested." "Why wouldn't I be? You're doing something important," he said, his voice steady. "I remember how much you cared about helping others. It's inspiring." Just then, a group of teenagers wandered over, curious about the tables filled with art supplies and flyers for the upcoming classes. Agnes took a deep breath and turned her attention to them. "Hi there, I'm Agnes. Are you interested in joining our school?" she asked, her enthusiasm bubbling to the surface. One of the boys, a tall and lanky teen with a baseball cap, shrugged. "What's the deal? What do you teach?" "Creative skills like art, music, and even some life skills to help you prepare for the future," Agnes explained, her passion igniting as she spoke. "We want to create a space where you can explore your talents and express yourselves." The boy exchanged glances with his friends, clearly intrigued but not yet convinced. "Sounds cool, but what if it's lame?" Agnes chuckled, feeling more at ease. "I promise you, it won't be lame. We'll have guest artists, workshops, and even field trips. It'll be a fun way to learn and grow. Plus, you'll have a say in what you want to learn." Tom stepped in, "And I'll be there to help. I can teach some music workshops too. Trust me, you'll want to be part of this." The teens looked at each other, their interest piqued, and Agnes felt a surge of hope. Maybe this was what she needed to turn her nerves into excitement. As she engaged with the group, sharing her ideas and listening to their thoughts, the atmosphere shifted. Laughter and chatter filled the room, and Agnes realized that she was beginning to connect with the very people she had hoped to inspire. As the event progressed, Agnes found herself more and more in her element. She moved from one group to another, sharing her vision and listening to their ideas. The atmosphere was electric, and the support from her friends and community members fueled her determination. "Agnes, can I borrow you for a second?" Jack called, waving her over. "Sure," she said, excusing herself from the teenagers. When she reached him, he looked a little more serious than before. "I just wanted to say how proud I am of you. You're really making an impact today," Jack said, his voice softening. "It's not easy to put yourself out there, but you're doing it." "Thanks, Jack. It really means a lot," she replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't do this without your support." Just then, a woman approached them, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Excuse me, are you Agnes? I heard about your school, and I'd love to learn more." "Yes, I am," Agnes replied, her spirit lifted by the woman's interest. "We're starting a community school focused on creative skills. What interests you?" "I'm a local artist, and I'd love to volunteer or teach some classes," the woman said eagerly. "I think it's such an important initiative." Agnes's heart swelled at the prospect of having more people join her mission. "That would be fantastic. We could use all the help we can get." As they continued to talk, Agnes felt a sense of purpose wash over her. The event was becoming everything she had hoped for. Connections were being made, and the community was rallying around her dream. Later in the afternoon, as the crowd began to thin, Agnes found herself standing next to Tom again. They shared a quiet moment, watching the last few families leave. "Today was amazing," Agnes said, a smile breaking across her face. "I didn't expect so many people to be interested." "Neither did I." "You really have something special here, Agnes," Tom said, his gaze steady and sincere. "I think you're going to make a real difference." "Thank you for offering to help. It means a lot to me," she replied, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I never thought I'd be doing something like this at my age, but it feels right." "Age is just a number, Agnes. You're doing something that matters, and that's what counts," he said, stepping closer. "You've always had this drive. It's inspiring to see you chase your dreams." The air was charged with unspoken words, and for a moment Agnes felt as if they were the only two people in the room. Memories of their past flooded her mind, shared laughter, late-night talks, and the undeniable chemistry that had once existed between them. "Tom, she started, but before she could finish her thought, a group of excited kids burst through the doors, giggling and chattering about the crafts they had made. The moment slipped away, and Agnes felt a pang of disappointment, mixed with relief. "Looks like we have some new recruits," Tom said, breaking the tension. "Yes, it does," Agnes replied, forcing a smile as she turned her attention to the children who were eagerly showing off their creations. As she engaged with them and their families, Agnes realized that she was slowly beginning to find her footing again. With each passing moment, the weight of her past seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of hope and determination. The day had been a success, and her heart brimmed with possibilities. As the event came to a close, Agnes felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, knowing that she wasn't alone. With Jack's unwavering support, Tom's unexpected involvement,